Welcome to Sacred Rebels podcast, where we discuss life after trauma as we question societal norms and shatter stigmas. Are you a woman who longs for a sense of community and understanding? Well, stick around. There is a seat for you here. This is your host, Tay.
And co-host, Amy.
And we're just two best friend millennial moms and entrepreneurs navigating life and motherhood while on a spiritual healing journey.
We don't do surface level, and we're definitely not your typical moms, so let's dig deep. We plan to cover it all and take you behind the scenes as we share our personal experiences, learn more about the holistic side of healing, and introduce all the incredible humans we've met along the way.
Join us as we share the good, the bad, and the ugly side of healing. We hope to help you step into your power. Thanks so much for listening. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Sacred Rebels. Tonight we have Phoebe here, and Amy's going to introduce her after we do our big deep breath.
Big deep breath. Let's start. Let's arrive here in this moment. We'll put one hand on the heart, one hand on the belly. The heart is the intuition. The gut is the wisdom. Take a big breath in through the nose. Slowly exhale. Let that shit go. So I'm so excited to introduce Phoebe from B1 Coaching. And we actually know each other because she was one of our first teachers here at Sacred Moon. She had first gotten her yoga. Yeah, she had first gotten her yoga teacher training. And our mutual friend Jill is amazing. She's from Nourished Event. We talk about Jill all the time. She's going to be on the podcast very soon. And we just have a lot of mutual friends in the yoga community and the healing community. So I'm so honored to hear about all the amazing things that she's doing.
Yeah.
Thank you for having
Super
me.
excited. She also pulled our card. Yeah.
Yeah. So I pulled Bring It Into Form. And it's got water on it. It's a very beautiful card.
I love that. What number is that?
Number 41.
41.
Yeah.
5.
And so just a little bit about the card. It says, now it is time to bring those possibilities of light into the world. And it's really funny. Phoebe actually means shining light.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's Greek. They need to live to manifest. The world needs not only your dreams, beautiful as they are, but also your creations. And then it says, you are being asked to honor yourself with a commitment to complete your inspired tasks. This will help you to grow, and that is a wonderful reason to commit. So I really liked this card because, yeah.
I'm going to show it.
I really liked it because so I started my business as a coaching business in 2018. And as I started it, I was also in grad school to be a therapist. And I knew that therapy was what I wanted to do. And so my business has definitely been like these different layers of like, first we're going to do this, then we're going to let it like transform into what it wants to be. And so I was also thinking when I was reading the card, so my mom, when I was a little kid, she always say, Phoebe, you're going to do great things before I went to bed. And as a kid, the ego is very different. So I thought like, oh, I'm going to be rich. Like that's what's going to happen. But then no, I became a social worker and not rich.
Not rich at all.
But doing great things.
Yeah, rich spiritually.
Yeah, rich with life. And so, yeah, I wish she was right about the other thing, but that's okay. And I feel like I am doing great things, and I feel like I'm going to continue to do those things, and only like my counseling business now, I want it to be more and more and more with the intention of helping more and more people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoyed this card. And that's a nice way to start.
It is. It's a good little intro, I feel like. So as a coach and like probably like, you know, counselor, like so EMDR, is that your main focus in therapy? Or do you do like regular talk therapy, or do you do?
Yeah, so I in New Hampshire, I'm a dual licensed therapist, so I have my master's license drug and alcohol counseling license, and then I have my independent social worker license.
Cool. So
Yeah, so I don't actually do the coaching anymore.
okay.
Yeah, so I focus mainly on counseling people who have co-occurring disorders, so a substance use disorder and then a mental health issue going on.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, and the reason why I, went big and pursued both licenses is there's definitely this separation in the healing of people when they go to treatment. Of they have the option to go to mental health treatment, and then they have the option to go to substance use treatment. But there's not a lot of programs out there, or like any that treat both at the same time.
Yeah.
And we can't split people. You
Yeah.
know? We can't be like, hey, I'm going to treat this part of you, but then this part of you, I'm really sorry, but like,
I can't.
we can't do that.
Yeah.
No, and that's
that
what
makes a
happens
lot
in
of
treatment.
sense.
And the majority of people that go into addiction treatment centers have severe mental health because those mental health issues haven't been treated. So it's like the client is self-treating with alcohol, which causes the addiction.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you mentioned EMDR. So I am an EMDR therapist. And when people come to see me, it's really meeting the person where they're at and what they want their treatment to look like.
Yep.
So if they want to do EMDR, and a lot of them end up like slowly getting there,
Yeah.
I'm like, let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, it's intense.
Yeah, I was just
You know,
going to say, can we explain just briefly what EMDR is for our listeners? Because I know a lot of people, every time I mention it, they're like, what is EMDR? Like, what even is that? Can you explain in a better way than probably I can what EMDR is to our listeners?
Yeah, so I'm an analogy person. I like a good metaphor.
Love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
So, say you are like hurrying up to clean something, right? You have to go someplace, your kids are like screaming and
Yep.
and so you put everything in a place and you're scrambling, but you don't really have the time. So when you do EMDR, essentially what you're doing is you are taking the memories in a traumatic event have been stored incorrectly or in an ineffective way. And that is due to when you're in your fight or flight response. So that's like fight, flight, freeze, and fawn as well. So when that traumatic event happens, you don't really have the moment to process the event because your body is reacting because we have that mind-body connection. So it would be kind of like you come back into your kitchen and you take everything out of the cabinets and then you sort through it and then you put it back in the right place and everything is organized. And it's not that when you do EMDR, it's not that you're going to have amnesia and not remember that this thing happened to you.
Yeah.
Well, if only we could do that with some things, but what it is going to do is it's going to desensitize you to
Reprocess
that.
the memories.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then your body doesn't have the same reaction.
Exactly.
Because you've healed it out
I
of
had
your
my
body.
first breakthrough this last few months ago. It was like the first time I thought of this like super traumatic sexual memory as like a child, and all of a sudden like it was just like in the middle of my session I just started bawling because I didn't feel any type of body reaction. I didn't mentally like freak out on the inside. I didn't panic. Like it was the first time that like I had thought of it and it was blank.
Yeah.
Like it was like a memory. Like that was it. There was no visceral body reaction.
Yeah, and it's an amazing thing to see. I will admit, disclose, I have done EMDR before, and something in becoming a therapist that was really important to me is I never wanted to feel like a hypocrite. So I used my becoming a therapist. I mean, that came out of like my own issues and my own healing.
Yeah.
But I will never suggest to a client to do something that I haven't tried myself.
Yeah, I love that.
And so that has been like a huge motivation. It's amazing to see it click for people, especially like people that have had significant things happen, like you were alluding to. And it's just amazing to see that click for them. And especially when they've tried so many things.
Other things. That was me. I was like about to like just fucking throw in the towel. I was like done. It was like affecting my marriage and the way that I parent and just so many things like just would fucking set me off. And that was like, it was it. EMDR was like the last thing. And it was because she had suggested that I try it because she obviously had been through it first.
Yeah, I did EMDR when I was 5 years sober. I was like messing everything up in my life, and my childhood sexual trauma was just like ruling every decision that I made, because no matter how many times I did a 4th step, or, you know, me personally, like the work that I was doing in 12-step work just wasn't enough to like get me to heal those deeper things that didn't have anything to do with my addiction. Like, that's the thing, right? Like, we're trying to treat these traumas, or, you know, you come in you with an addiction and not realizing that you have all these underlining issues that are actually causing the addiction, and the addiction is just the symptom of the shit.
Well, and like addiction and alcohol use, drug use, whatever, food, sex, whatever process addictions. We don't talk a lot about those, like gambling.
Anything, even the gym.
Yes. Shopping.
Yep.
Shopping's a
Food,
serious problem.
Netflix, TV, escapism.
Binging.
Yeah, and that's a form of dissociation. And so when you go to see if you are ready to actually start the processing of EMDR, we do an assessment of you to see what your dissociation scale is. And, you know, addiction is just a form of dissociation. So I firmly believe that all of these issues with addiction come from some sort of trauma or some sort of othering, feeling different. And, you know, the quote, like, the opposite of addiction is connection. And I know for myself, for other people, that, you know, you feel different, so then you reach to something to make yourself feel whole, but when that thing is not going to make you feel whole.
Exactly. That's exactly how I feel. You just said it perfectly in my mind.
I think we should, you know, it's important for us, like, as what our podcast's mission, and I know we talked about this, is like, what got you here? Like, what for you personally, like, as a woman, like, made you go towards the holistic, like, healing? I want to heal the world and be a social worker and not make millions of dollars, and like give my whole life to like giving back to people, you know, with trauma. And it takes special people. It takes special people to fulfill these roles, and to be able to like wake up every day and be like, I want to sit in a room and share my energy with you to help you heal. And not only that, like, you did years and years of college and paid a lot of money and are probably in big debt to, like, you know, to give back to this purpose. So
yeah, I was trying to think about that on the drive here, of like, and it's funny, I always try to remember why I went to grad school, because all the debt. The debt. And honestly, it just, like, this sounds kind of silly, but it just happened. Like, I just turned around and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in grad school to be a social worker. And my background, I went to undergrad for marketing and PR. So this was not the path that I was planning.
Not even close.
Yeah, no. And so I think I was meant to do this work. I think that's the first reason behind it. And then I think I remember as a kid, I was a very energetic child. Like, I would describe myself as a very, very happy child. And like, I would get in trouble in school for dancing in the hallway and like singing in the class, which I understand now is like disruptive to teachers. But I couldn't help myself, you know? And so, but I remember around that time, the adults in my life started to really like tell me to rein it in. And that really had a strong impact. And I think it was just recently in the last few years that I've started to like get back to that person. And we talk in the therapy world a lot about like inner child work, and something also that I really like to pull into my practice is parts work. So looking at like,
what's that?
Yeah. So parts work is like looking at like as people, we have many different parts of ourselves. And how do we heal each individual part of ourselves? And then we have ourself, which is like our soul, our like who we truly
Oh my God,
are.
I love that.
Yeah, I've done some of
Yeah.
that work. It's like you have these like pieces of your life almost that you're like, well, I can accept all of this, but like this little tiny piece, like I'm really like not okay with the certain behaviors that came out in this. So just like really like loving and accepting all the parts, all the voices, the inner critic, or like, you know what I mean? And you have all these different roles, like you have the mom role and you have the sister role and you have the daughter role and you have all these parts, but there might be some that are you're like a little less like in love with. So you almost like try to stick it to the back a little.
Yeah, like
interesting.
thinking about in the 12-step program, they talk about character defects, right?
Yeah.
So, which I'm not a huge fan of like that
The language.
title. Yeah. But if you think about it, like
Defects.
those are parts of ourselves.
Yes.
Right. And how do we heal?
And who like that's what makes us, you know, good, bad, or
And it's all one, and they're all a part of our soul. There is no different
Yes.
piece of us, but we want to have some sort of separation. Like, oh, that was me, but that was only me when I was doing these certain behaviors.
It was like survival, right? Like I feel like some of our character defects were like survival mechanisms. It's like I had this one thing keeping me doing this right thing, or like only doing this to protect me in this way. And it's like as soon as we start to open up our mind to the idea of that, like, oh, we can change those things, or we can become more aware of them and try to fix the behavior. It's different than just like labeling ourselves as like egotistical or, you know, lazy or not determined, all of these things that we had to like list out. Selfish, self-seeking, you know.
Yeah, and that thing that you're describing of like in the trauma keeping myself safe, like that is a part that's created in that moment. Kind of like, have you ever seen Inside Out before?
Yes,
Yeah.
the movie.
Yeah.
So cute.
So they're talking about like emotions in that movie, and like each character is an emotion. But if you think about it, like that's kind of like our parts too, is that we have these little beings.
Balls in our head.
Yeah. And so I think that I started this work out of the goal and intention of getting back to myself and getting back to that like little child that was just like so full of life and energy. And so when I started going to school, I kind of just like fell into like addiction work, and it felt really like good and natural to me. And then when I thought about starting a practice, I wanted it to be a place where like I said before, you determine what your healing is going to be, and also like using different modalities for that healing.
Yeah.
Because it never made sense to me for like, okay, I'm going to be a therapist that practices this one type of therapy.
Yeah.
Like cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Like that doesn't make sense to me because I'm missing out on so many different things. And so how do I pull in my yoga teacher experience? How do I pull in like breathing and meditation? How do I pull in, I'm kind of addicted to achievement, so I also used to be a health coach. So how do I pull in that like healthy eating and lifestyle into the work I'm doing with people, which I think is just so important for also people who are newly sober.
Yeah.
All of those things are missing.
Yeah. Lacking for sure. It's so like as you're talking, I'm like thinking of my therapist, Brecken. I think you two would really hit it off. Like I want to connect you. I swear to God, because she does the same thing. Like she brings all of these other practices into her one EMDR practice, right? But she talks to me about health and fitness and my mindset and yoga and having routines. And she's not only helped me obviously with trauma, but just like lifestyle, like living as a responsible adult.
Yeah, and I think it was mentioned on the podcast before, but the ACEs, the adverse childhood experience, and thinking about like trauma doesn't only have that impact on your brain, it also has an impact on your physical health. It has an impact on your relationships. It has an impact on so many things, and to address those things, also to prevent those things with kids, meeting their basic needs. So meeting our basic needs and addressing, all of our needs. like I said before, we can't split a person.
No.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
And I think it's just like important for people to realize that trauma just comes in so many different levels.
Yeah.
And that I talked about it a little bit on like my social media, that every single person has trauma. And if we're not like aware that we're like having these things and these behaviors, you're just causing yourself more trauma.
Yeah.
Like everybody has trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all dealt with some type of, whether in your mind it's big or small, it's still trauma. I hate when it's like when people try to minimize their situation, if especially like sponsees. Like if I used to work with sponsees and I would tell my story and then they would be like, oh, well, my story's like not that bad. Like I don't have that much trauma. It's like, girl, don't minimize it. Like trauma's trauma. It doesn't matter if you think it's big or small. It significantly impacted you.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, if I could write a book on comparison,
Yeah.
that's one
Like
of my
why?
favorite topics.
It's terrible. That's especially the world that we live in with social media and just all of it. It's like the actual thief of joy. And I feel like so many of us get so trapped in this like unrealistic expectation of what our lives need to or should look like because of social media now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the comparison can definitely keep people stuck. It can also, I mean, it has major impacts on people's mental health, and it's definitely it's a challenge living in our world. And yeah, like you said, like no one doesn't have some sort of traumatic experience. And I think that is like, I do want to like talk about a little bit about like stigma. And so working in the mental health world, and the reason why I kind of left my job and wanted to start a practice is working in the mental health field, there's definitely like a stigma about addiction and substance use. As practitioners, there's like among the providers, there's a stigma. And then thinking about on the addiction side and addiction treatment, there's definitely a stigma of mental health.
Yeah.
And so yeah, how do we bridge those together is really like, that's the mission of my practice. And
I love that.
and I want people to be able to connect to themselves and then connect to other people and have that like safe space to do it, and not just calling it a safe space, like actually making it a safe space.
Actually having a safe space.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so important.
Because I think that's very true, that a lot of people that have mental health issues, because there's not a lot of places for them to go or communities for them to get the proper resources, they are pushed into 12-step programs, and 12-step programs aren't really equipped to deal with people that have these severe
Significant
trauma.
Yeah.
Significant trauma, because it's like mental health, and then they're like forced into doing this program that's not really supportive of what they need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd always describe.
It's a Band-Aid.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate to say it like that, but like it feels like it's just a Band-Aid, and it's like there's so much deeper work to be done. That's definitely a good stepping stone, but it's a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I really think so.
Well, I think it's also a lot of like people, I'm trying to think of how to say this, but people like need to stay in their lane. It's like the nice way of saying it is like a sponsor is not a therapist. Just
they're
like
not qualified.
Yeah, just like
Not
I'm
qualified.
not a sponsor, I'm a therapist. And
Yeah.
so we really need to stick to like what is in your scope of practice. And I do think that does cause harm in the 12-step community, is sponsors trying to be a therapist when it should be like a referral. Just like I refer my clients to, like, if 12-step program is what you're interested in, great, let's connect you.
Yeah.
If that's not what you're interested in, let's find what works for you, because
Yeah.
there's so many ways to recover, and the 12 steps is not the only way to recover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I describe recovery to my clients as like a buffet, that like if you're going to a buffet, you're likely not just going to grab the mashed potatoes, like unless you really like mashed potatoes, but you're going to want to get all the different types of food.
Bits and pieces.
Yeah. So like yoga, therapy, recovery support, peer support worker. You mentioned the gym, going to the gym. And then at the end of the meal, you're still going to be full, even though you had all those different things.
Love the analogies.
I
Love the analogies.
Love them.
If
Keep
you're-
them coming.
yeah.
People can connect to those. That, like, when I run recovery
Yeah.
groups, and like treatment centers, like that's what I do too. Like, I have to make it like very relatable to
Yeah.
what, like, meeting people where they're at. We have to meet people where they're at, right? So I'm like going into detox, bringing sound bowls. So I have to like talk about meditation and just like bringing them to like thinking about, like, not thinking about lunch. Like, stay here in like this
Yeah.
room.
Yeah.
And like, just
With
because
me.
I know lunch is next, right?
Just
So
be
it's
with
like
me.
your mind is going to want to take you like to what's next or to like what's past. So I just like bring it and you're just like, that's it, right? Like, we just have to figure out how to meet people
Where they're at.
they're at.
I love that.
Do you feel like in your recovery that, like, when did you see yourself needing to like level up or like start to make that change? Now I'm interviewing you as the therapist.
I love it. So for me, it was it's been like 2 years, almost 2 years ago.
It was COVID.
Yeah, it was COVID for me, but I didn't decide to do anything about it until I think it was like right before my wedding. And then I was like, okay, like I had multiple mental breakdowns. My trauma was coming out significantly. Like I was having panic attacks about my wedding and the idea of like commitment forever, and just like my just trauma was like fucking spewing out of me. And I just like literally multiple mental breakdowns in like what was supposed to be one of the happiest times of my life. And I was like, okay, like something's happening. Like I need to figure this out because I can't live like this. And I can't push away an amazing human who fucking loves me unconditionally because of my own shit.
Yeah.
So
the trauma affecting your relationships.
yeah, I think so.
Because it's just like 12-step was just so serviceable. I mean, I was doing all this work while doing the 12 steps for years. You know, I did EMDR and I did a lot of stuff in AA also. Like I was like 5 years. Like 5 years was like 5 years of doing a million fucking 4th steps
In different ways.
and
Just
being
like too
this-
much.
I'm a seeker. Even now, like, you know, I'm 12 years in and I'm like I'm getting a breathwork certificate. Like, I'm never gonna stop.
Yeah.
Like, wanting to level up.
Yeah.
Yeah, healing out of obligation does not work. And then
No.
like that like feeling of obligation of like being of service. And I find that like, yes, being of service in an obligated way kind of keeps you in check because you don't want to step out of line. But I feel
fear.
like, yeah, fear.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Like, fear kept me in that for a really
Same.
long time. Fear and
identity.
shame.
Like that was my identity. I went through like a fucking serious identity crisis when I left the program. Like it was like a mind fuck for sure. But I think becoming a mom too was like when I had my son, it was like something had clicked in me and I was like, I can't be this way anymore. Like I have to heal for my children. Like I need to be the parent that I wanted. And that's what I'm going to fucking do. And I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to read all the books and I'm going to do all the things. And because that's how I am. I'm like, if I have an idea that I'm going to do something, like that's it. Like I'm all in. Like it's all or nothing. I'm like an all or nothing person. So I just dove deep into healing and like, what does that look like? What do I need to do? Like COVID happened. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to like be in my home, but I got to figure out what I'm going to still do with my mind. And she was doing like sound baths online. And that's when like you started bringing the sound baths online and the yoga classes, and my idea of like, okay, maybe I want to try yoga. Maybe I want to be more mindful and sit with self and be okay with self. Because you started doing things for the community during that time. Like you started going live and posting those things for us.
Yeah. And I think that like the root of the reason why the 12-step program tells you to do service is that like that piece of community.
Yeah.
And something that is really important to me is like equitable care for everyone, and that healing shouldn't just be like reserved for one type of person.
Yeah.
That healing, like we all deserve that healing, and also like we deserve like to heal in community, because we if we heal alone, it's not as effective, and we need to heal our communities. And
Can you? I don't know. Can you heal alone?
I know. Is that like an actual, like, is that ever been done before?
I don't know.
are you I feel like you're pointing something out that I've said.
No, I know. You just said it. You were like, "Oh, can you heal alone?" It made me think of that. It was
Yeah, like, can you do it alone? I
Because
really don't think you can.
I don't think you can.
I don't think you can.
I think what has been important for me is finding those safe people
Yeah.
to heal with.
Yeah, you need people to heal
Yeah.
with. That it's like my biggest thing. The only reason why I was able to heal myself, because nobody heals you, right? Like, this as a therapist,
Yeah.
that you're not really healing anybody. What you're doing is you're empowering somebody to heal themselves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And that's
Yep.
why
Yeah.
people
To do
think,
the work and do it
that's what
themselves.
we've been taught, that we need somebody to heal us. But it's not that. It's the reversal of that. We just need somebody to show us how to heal ourselves.
Yes.
And you have to show up. You have to show up at Phoebe's office.
You do.
You have
Yeah.
to show up somewhere, which means it's you. Like, you're empowering yourself. And people, I don't think people realize how big of a deal it is to, like, show up at a place to start healing, right? To show up at a yoga studio, to, like, do a breath work, to do a sound bath, to, like, pick up the phone, to, like, go to rehab, to go to treatment. Like, that's you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
You showing up for you.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I forgot what I was gonna say.
We were talking about healing alone. I don't know. I never know.
Damn.
Maybe it'll come back and you
That's
can
the
just
brain.
throw it back in
The brain
there.
just like
Yeah.
it goes someplace. Yeah.
Always.
It's there because we could only access how much % of our brain? It's why, because it's like just going through it.
Oh, I was gonna say thank you. I was gonna say it's so funny when a client is like, "Oh my gosh, Phoebe, thank you so much." Like they thank me for something, or like thank our time together, or like the work that we're doing, and I'm like, I didn't do anything. Like, yeah, I held the space for you. I showed you that professionals can be safe to work with, but like you did all the work. Like, I'm just here to talk to you and listen.
To be a space holder.
That's so funny you say that. Like, I feel like I'm like, in my mind, I keep thinking of Brecken. I'm like, because she saved my life. I like feel like I owe her my life. But really, like, I did that work.
She's just a really good space holder.
She's just a really good space holder.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that, I mean, so if you come to my office, it's funny, the first office I toured, you had to like go down into this outdoor staircase and you had to like duck your head, and like it kind of like felt like a dungeon, a healing dungeon. And I was like, not the space. So now the space I did choose is you walk in and it's like windows are like lining the whole space, and the sun comes in, and I wanted it to be bright, and I don't know if you've ever airy, because I went to a therapist as a kid, and the art was like really drab, and it was just like
dark and
like,
old school. Yeah.
I
can picture it in my mind. I've been to plenty.
Yeah. So I really wanted I wanted every part of someone's experience in therapy to be like, this is a safe, comfortable space for you to come and to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah.
And that's like my biggest thing here.
Yeah,
it's
like I feel like you get that vibe when you come in here.
And that's
like
literally
all of it ties into it.
What everyone says when they walk in here. They're like, wow. And when you go in that room, there's like people are just, I mean, you were just here on Saturday with Jillian's breathwork event, and there was, 23 people in here crying, screaming, laughing, like doing all of these things together in a vulnerable, healing community.
I love it so much.
And like you have to, like, that has to be a space. Like we're in Manchester. There's like motorcycles and
airplanes.
Like
all the airplanes come through.
all this stuff, and you're literally in like the middle of Manchester. But you walk in here, and and
this
that
feels sanctuary. It's very like
your living room.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very
It's like
zen.
your living room.
Yeah, the purple. My color's orange, so I get it.
Yeah, orange isn't like because that orange and purple are both very like calming and grounding and homey. everything's like,
Yeah, physical space is definitely important. And
set and setting, right? They
Yep.
say it about doing mushrooms, like, or any type of psychedelic. You have to have set and setting, mindset and your setting. Like, it's like you have to come in here willing to do the work, but also the setting helps, like feeling safe and calm, and the colors and the vibe and the energy and the Palo Santo burning and just like all of it. Like it plays in. Like smells are significant. One thing for me when I go into Brecken's office is she uses like this Myers room spray, and it's rainwater, and every single time I go there I can like breathe because I feel like I smell it at like the front door of her building, you know. It just wafts all the way to the front door. So I like get there and I'm like, yes, like I'm here and I'm just ready to unload.
Yeah, and I mean that's in traumatic experiences, like smells, sounds,
Yep.
those can all be triggering, but also thinking about like how do we replace things, like especially when people enter recovery. My favorite topic is hobbies, because no one has hobbies, because drugs and alcohol were their hobbies.
Yep.
And so like what do you like to do, like these positive experiences that we want to reinforce, and figuring out, that's the beautiful thing, figuring out like who are you and like what do you like that question, what do you like to do, can feel so overwhelming for people.
Yeah, I still feel, I'm like, there's so many things I want to do. Like I'm like, can I do it all? Like in my mind, like I have like a list of all these crazy things like I want to do, and I'm like, am I just like multi-passionate? I feel like I'm just like multi-passionate. Like you say something, I'm like, yep, that sounds cool, I want to try it, you know.
You can do it all.
I know.
If you want to do it, you can do it.
I do know this, right? Like I know this.
I feel like I do a lot.
Yeah, you do a lot.
But I think the difference between doing a lot and then like I was just gonna say the difference between doing a lot and doing a lot, but you know what I mean.
I actually get what you mean.
I actually get it.
Because I feel like a lot of the things I do, I love to do, right? So it's like everything that I'm doing isn't feel like something that I like
have to do. Like a chore.
Right, I just get to do all these things, and I enjoy doing them all, but I do a lot of different things. It's like the nonprofit and treatment work and yoga and breath work, and I ride motorcycle and I go to the gym and I parent.
Yeah.
That's just like parent 5
but that's
children.
another thing, like,
yeah.
And you said most of all of your listeners, all the ladies,
all the ladies.
and I think that's like something that's instilled with us, is that like we have to do it all. But also, like, I think reframing that of, like, you can do whatever you want to do. Like, that empowerment, there's, like, a different vibe of, like, you know, you have to do it all versus, like, you can do it.
You can do whatever you want.
Yeah. Or you
whatever
can't.
The fuck
like,
you want.
if you don't want to, you know? It's like that you can do whatever you want, but you also don't have to do anything you don't want to do.
Yeah.
So
I'm definitely into, like, changing like our societal norms among women,
disruptors.
Like, it's very disruptors.
It's in our bio. That's what we're doing here. We're questioning and changing societal norms, and just the rules are made up.
The rules are made up.
The rules are made up.
Yeah.
It's all up to you.
Anything and everything is possible.
Yeah.
I think that's it, right? Like we've been taught to believe that like you have to have like one set goal or like one thing that you're going to like be really good at, and just like, put all your focus into that like one thing, like motherhood or whatever you're if you don't choose motherhood, like it's like this like linear like path of this like one thing, and if you like steer away from that like one thing that you like originally had your like eyes set on, it's like now all of a sudden you're like discredited, or like you didn't, you know, you like now it's like this new thing for you, and like you don't have, you know what I mean, like this. Again,
it's like when you're a kid and they ask you like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I feel like either some kids know or some kids feel a lot of pressure. Like me, I was like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. You know, still it's like to this day I'm just like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Like I want to do everything. I want to do it all. It's like you don't have to just be one thing, or you can pick something and you don't have to stick with it. It's another thing. You go to college, you get a degree in something, you don't even fucking do anything with it. Like, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, our paths are not linear, and I think I am someone that I like things to be in order and know what's happening, but like life is not like that. And I think I've done a good job of just letting things flow the way they're supposed to flow. And then looking back, it's such a beautiful thing of like, oh, this all got set up for me to be where I am now. Like, it all makes sense. Like, I believe everything is intentional.
Me too.
So.
And on purpose.
Yep.
And there's no mistakes.
No mistakes.
And
no
I think
coincidences.
believing that or trusting that when something really shitty happens in your life, like recently something really shitty happened in my life, and I was like, oh, okay, this hopefully is just like opening up the door for something better.
Or a lesson. Lesson or a blessing.
Yeah. I say that. If once you make that shift, where no matter how shitty the situation is, that you're like, well, this is happening for me.
Yep.
It's not happening to me. Like, it's
Yeah,
happening for
she's
me
the
and
queen
for
of
the
that.
greater good. It's happening for me and it's for the greater good. Because, like, if I'm in the universal flow,
Yep.
if that's, like, how I want to live my life, like, you know, doing all these things, like, connected to the universe, connected to you, connected to everyone, then I just have to trust
Yep.
that, like, even when these things are happening where I'm like, it doesn't make sense. Nothing actually makes sense. And I just don't really understand why. I'm just like, okay, I know that it's happening for me. And if it's happening for me because of who I am and what I do and what I give back to the community and all these things, that it's for the greater good.
Yep.
Because that's my intention.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's how I became a therapist.
I love it.
I have no idea.
And how long have you been like in it in your new practice? Or it's not a new practice, right?
So I started my practice alongside a full-time job, which I highly recommend. Don't recommend at all. Yeah.
You had dreams,
You get
girl.
quite tired. Yeah. And it was worth it. And so last week I just went full-time with my practice.
Oh my gosh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
a celebration.
It is a celebration.
Okay.
So you
Yeah.
quit your full-time job. What was the full-time job?
So I work in harm reduction and I'm still working part-time doing that. And that's something that's really important to me. Like you mentioned set and setting, that is a harm reduction practice of, you know, there's just so many like things that we can do to reduce harm, especially if people aren't ready to stop using. And I don't think I mentioned that yet of like, so my practice, I definitely use a harm reduction focus of, you know, we know that forcing someone into treatment doesn't work and people need to be ready. And I think it's also like totally arrogant to think that we can force people to do things just because they have a substance use issue. Like they're people, this is their life path. They get to make their choices. Like my clients are the experts in their life. I, again, am not doing anything. I'm just there to like keep the space for them. So harm reduction has been a huge thing in my work as a therapist and looking at ways to reduce the suffering in people's lives.
I love that.
I love that too.
I know it's been 4 or 5 months that I've been working at this treatment center, and there's this, you know, there's the people that like come in and that's what you have to say to them. It's like, are you done? Like, and it's okay if you're not. And, like, there's other options, right? Like, and it's just like, and then they're like constantly doing this cycle of like being
in and out.
And just like not feeling good about their decisions.
Yeah.
Right? Like not feeling good about like this cycle of like like going in a 30-day and then out for 2 weeks and then back in the 30-day and then like back out for 2 weeks, and it's like there has to be, this is it, right? Like there's just like other options, and I think that's what people don't realize, right? Because we're just like taught that that's like the only way, that they don't realize that there's this other option, that maybe you can like still smoke marijuana and see a therapist, so you don't have to have this like really strict or like be on or like whatever it is, that there's this other option of, rather than like going into 30-day treatment and like hating the 30-day treatment, then you're in this 30-day inpatient and you're miserable, and then you get out and you go and excessively use. And I feel like that's also probably a way that a lot of people have overdoses, because they get completely cut off or whatever it is.
Harm reduction, I think what I have seen is that people who are choosing to still use drugs or alcohol are kind of set aside, and it's kind of like, we say as a society, or even as like the recovery world, that like you are only worthy of care when you're ready to stop. And people are worthy of care regardless of their choice of using or not using.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I was listening to a podcast this morning about harm reduction and the new therapy protocols about psilocybin and all of this, and how like Oregon, and there was like one other place that's like they're doing like studies right
Colorado?
now. Is it Colorado? There's 2 places right now that they have labs, and there's therapists there, and they're doing like setting and harm reduction with psilocybin and drug addicts specifically, like seeing how it impacts their life in a way, like long-term IV drug addicts. I was listening to like a whole podcast this morning on it, on the Huberman podcast, and it was very interesting. And I wonder if that were ever to come into like fruition here in New Hampshire, like become legal, is that something that you would have an open mind on? Is like harm reduction with psilocybin in like microdose form, and helping addicts in that way as like harm reduction?
Big question.
I know.
Putting me on the spot.
I know.
No, I love
Sorry.
it.
I
Put
mean,
me on the spot.
That's the age we're coming into right now. Like it's
Plants.
starting to
Plants.
Yeah.
It's starting to really become a thing.
No, yeah. So I'm part of an EMDR group of therapists, and one of the therapists does do she does ketamine therapy with individuals, and so she doesn't distribute the ketamine, obviously. But I think for me, I definitely look at the person, because we're not all the same, and what works for me doesn't work for you. And I think it's working with someone in a supportive way to find what works for them. So thinking about psilocybin, like if that works for you and your mental health is in a place where it's working and it's supportive, that's awesome. Will I personally ever practice that? That's not the type of therapist I am, but like I will help you figure out what works for you. And
I agree. I think it's not for everyone, for sure, and that's what they kept saying, right? Like if you have these, you'd have to like figure it out slowly and work with a therapist to figure out if this is the right harm reduction for you to try.
Yeah, and I think harm reduction is practical and evidence-based strategies to reduce the harm associated with drug use. And so there are so many different harm reduction practices. I mean, even like getting people reliable, safe housing is a form of harm reduction. I know you talked to Jess on the podcast, having access to single-use syringes that you don't have to share, you don't have to use multiple times yourself. That's a form of harm reduction. So I think it's really, and it's funny, like when I talk to people about harm reduction, they'll be like, well, do you have like a set of like this will work for me because it worked for this other person? I'm like, no, like we need to find what works for you as an individual.
I think that's the also other piece of that, like other people go to therapy and they're like so excited that like this worked for them, and then they tell their friends about it, and then they go and try a certain thing, and then it doesn't really work the same way, and then it's like, oh well, I'm not going to go try this other thing because like somebody told me to do this and it didn't work. And I think that that's really like an important issue to know, that like this isn't healing isn't a one size fits all. Like it's about you figuring out what's going to work for you, and you may have to try 5 different things to get to the thing that's going to actually, help you get better, right? Do you see that? Like, do you have like...
Yeah, I mean, therapy is like dating. Like, you need to find the person that's right for you.
And I was just going to say, like, maybe it doesn't work out once, but that's not to say that it won't work out again if you try it years later, because that's what happened with me in EMDR. The first time I did it, I wasn't mentally ready or willing or, like, in a, like, just good mindset to do that. And then like a year and a half later, I was like, okay, I'm ready. Like now I'm ready. Now I'm willing, Yeah,
EMDR only works if you are open to it. So if you came to me and you were like closed off to the idea, you're like, this isn't going to work. Okay, yeah, it's not going to work.
It's definitely not going to work. Yeah.
And I can't do anything to make it work. Like, again, I'm not doing anything. I'm only holding the space. And for therapy, you have to have buy-in. Like if you come to my office, and I've experienced this at times with people, is they want me to fix their problems, or they want me to be the person that they can like project their problems onto. And I think that's a total natural behavior that people have. However, it's ineffective, and I can't fix your life. Like I can't fix your marriage. I can't fix like your addiction. Like I can support you in healing those things, but you have to do the work. And therapy is really hard work. It is. It's really
hard work. You have to take the suggestions. You have to, like, you're not just going to go once a week and, like, sit in a room for an hour and you're going to, like, be healed. That's the other thing. It's, like, the same thing with yoga or, like, anything going to the gym. It's not like you're just going to, like, show up at these places and you're going to, like, take this class and, like, expect to go home like this healed person. No, it's, like, homework. It's, like, understanding yourself and knowing, like, your inner workings, and, like, sometimes it takes like somebody to like sit down with you and be like, okay, well, you act this way. And you know, I do private sessions here and like private healing sessions, and that's what it's about. It's just like me being like, okay, like, why are you doing that? Like, what is this behavior? Like, I don't know why you're going home and doing these things. I don't know why you're showing up this way. You need to figure it out. I'm going to help you figure it out in like being quiet and like having sound and like with movement, and like you can have this safe space where you're going to start to think about why you're doing these things. Yeah. But I don't fucking know. I don't know why you're doing it.
Yeah. It's a mystery.
Yeah. And
it's a mystery.
But it's everyone's mystery.
Everyone's mystery.
Like every single person knows it. Like and I think that that's the other thing, right? Like we all know what the thing is, and we just like don't have a place that we can go and feel safe and have a safe space holder.
Yeah. And I and in part you have to create that space for yourself too.
Yeah.
You have to
allow yourself to heal.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. Thinking about like trauma, like if you are someone who's in recovery from trauma, your default is probably like uncomfortable experiences. Like those like shitty experiences are probably more comfortable than like being happy and like that's uncomfortable.
The chaos.
You know? Yeah.
Chaos
the chaos
too. Like I still like that's like one of my again, I don't want to call it character defects, but I just like love chaos and I thrive in chaos sometimes. But also like sometimes it doesn't feel good anymore to do that. Where I'm like, okay, this actually doesn't feel that great. Like I actually do want to start planning my life and planning my day and not thrive in chaos throughout the day, especially like as a stay-at-home mom. I'm just like, no, I actually do want to get up earlier and actually do want to have a routine and actually do want to have a little bit of order in my life.
Yeah, it's creating it for yourself.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, that might be coming with age and just, like, growing up and fucking maturing, but I don't know. Maybe healing, too. Maybe a little of both.
I think it might be a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing, right? We need structure.
Yeah.
We as human beings need routine and structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's why, I mean, sober living works really well for people that are newly sober, is there is a lot of structure, and I don't know how they do it. There's so many rules. But it's helpful to people to create that structure and order. It's kind of like being reparented, and like a lot of therapy and a lot of healing is reparenting yourself. I know you mentioned having kids and wanting to be a different parent, and I see, I work with a lot of mothers, and this process of them when they are parenting their kids, also reparenting themselves.
Yeah, I'm healing my own inner child every single day, I feel like. Just in different experiences with my children, which is like the most beautiful gift that I get to have through them.
Yeah.
I really feel that way.
I know I was talking about it tonight about, like, because I have my older foster daughters, and they're 16 and 17, and I'm like, man, I really wish I had a me when I was their age. You know, could you imagine, like...
The best.
Being 6. Yeah, so I was just like saying that I wish that I had a me, you know, just can you imagine? So that's like my goal now is like as a mom, and like, you know, I got teenagers when I didn't have like the lead up to teenagers, so I'm like really trying to figure it out, so that's like really tough, but you know, they're graduating and doing prom and driver's license and all the things, so I'm just trying to like remember that what it was like to be that age.
That's so fun though. I can't wait for stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I can't wait for sports and all of it. Like to have friends over.
But reparenting, it's definitely Because, like, our generation, our parents, like, didn't know, like, I think that's been my biggest healing, right? Because some of, like, my deepest wounds are obviously, like, our parent wounds, right? And so reading the 4 agreements, listening to the 4 agreements, and just, like, realizing the programming and that, like, our parents did the best they could with what they had, and they didn't know better, and it wasn't intentional, right? Like, it wasn't, they weren't intentionally parenting us this way. They didn't know how to support us emotionally because that's not what was supported in them. So they have no emotional maturity. So we're, like, being raised by people that have no emotional maturity, and now we're in a society where that's becoming the most important thing.
I don't know if there's any truth to this, but I think of, like, the millennial generation as a bridge generation. So thinking about, like, the baby boomers and then thinking about Gen Z, and that we are, like, the ones that are undoing generational trauma so that Gen Z can change the world.
Yes.
I literally
it's all on
say
you,
it all
Gen
the time.
Z.
Yeah. Can you guys figure it out for us? Because, like, we're, like, bridging the, we're, like, you know what I mean? We're doing a lot of work here for you guys to really
It's
make
actually,
this fucking
like, the
shift.
truth, though. Like, I swear to God, we said that in the last episode, too. It's, like, I think just COVID and Great Awakenings and social media, having the tools on your phone and TikTok to learn all these new parenting styles or healing modalities or all these things, like, we as a generation are the ones starting to talk about healing and digging deeper and uncovering shit and generational trauma and healing your inner child and parenting technique, like all this crazy shit that obviously our parents didn't have. You're right. They did the best they could with the best they had. And
I will say about social media and TikTok, don't diagnose yourself. Don't.
Oh, yeah.
Don't.
We've all gone down that rabbit hole.
Just like with your sponsor, they're not your therapist.
Yep.
But
Exactly. I definitely take some, leave some for sure, especially when it comes to, like, parenting stuff.
My mom sent me a meme the other day because, like, my mom has, like, very similar trauma that I had, and she was just like, it takes a very brave person to, like, be the person that, like, breaks the generational curses. And I was like, you know what, Mom, it takes a really brave person to raise the daughter that does it.
I love that.
Yeah.
If you and your listeners are looking for another great book, Mother Hunger, I don't remember the author's name right now, but it's a great book about your relationship with your mother, and it's a heavy read. I always say my favorite genre is depressing nonfiction. It is some depressing nonfiction. No, it's a really healing book. I know friends that have also read it and have greatly
Awesome. I'll definitely plug
healed.
that.
Yeah. It's a good book.
Yeah, we'll plug it in the thing. That's the one my mom's like a white witch, and she's, like, always been into crystals, and, like, she has a broom above her door, and, like, she's just, like, always been it. Like, she would always know, like, when I was, like, at my darkest time, like, she would pick up the phone and, like, call me, and she'd be like, I know you're not okay.
That inner knowing,
Yeah.
My mom was the same.
Yeah. So, me and my dad's another story, but me and my mom are good. Yeah. No, I love my dad. We actually, like...
It's okay if you have a difficult relationship.
Yeah, we definitely do. But it's been
difficult's
better.
okay.
Difficult's okay. Yeah.
Not okay, like, that's great for you, but, like, okay. It's okay.
It's accepting to accept it. Yeah, I've accepted it. So, like, me and my dad, we talk at least 4 times a week, but there was a time when we didn't talk for 5 years. Like, I could not even be in the same room.
Yeah, boundaries. Maybe that's part 2 of us. Talking about boundaries.
Boundaries are so important.
And I think it's very hard, especially when it comes to family, because you think that you have to have, right? It's like I can't cut them off, but it's like, but you can.
Yeah, it's obligation again.
Yeah.
One of my favorite words, obligation. People think that they can't set boundaries with their family. They think they can't cut ties with people in their family. And I understand that's, like, a difficult and that can really create a wound in people, but you can create those boundaries. And I think there's also always an option. I always say, like, we think there's, like, a door A and door B, but there's always a trap door. Like, we can find another solution or compromise, but I think also, like, thinking don't compromise your well-being, and even if it's family, you have to set those boundaries. So
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm getting to that age too where it's like I don't I will not accept or tolerate bullshit anymore. I don't care if we're family or not. Do you know what I mean? Like the disrespect, like the constant fucking disrespect of like my choices as like a parent or whatever it may be, you know? Like I just don't have time, don't care enough. Like, where were you?
Yeah.
The past however many, you know?
And people will have judgment about your healing. And I would just say, like, my healing is none of your
Always.
business.
Yeah.
Like, I get to heal the way I want to heal, and it's my path.
I love that.
Amen.
None of your
to
business.
Yeah.
Motherfuckers.
Amen to that. I believe that, and I think that that's like another stigma, right?
Yeah,
it's like
it is.
there's so many judgy like people that don't understand this like deep healing work, that they're like, oh, you're doing that? Like what?
It's
like,
wooey. Like, ooh.
Yeah, what did someone at the breath work mention something about like healing spaces and kind of like the spiritual bypassing of healing spaces, and how we, you know, we just say like, oh, like all like just positive vibes
Love
or like
and
that
light.
kind
Yeah.
of, yeah, love and light, that's what it was. And thinking about like it's okay for healing to be messy. It's going to be messy.
Yeah, it is not all fucking love and light. That
No.
is not it. You are very confused, and I'm
It's dark.
sorry.
It can be very dark
And
and deep.
that's a social media thing, right? Like there are people that are like, oh, just love and light. And even when I'm always over here like, oh, everything's happening for me and to me, it does not mean that I am not crying. I shared about it today on my Facebook. I was in yoga class. I cried for like 10 minutes. I didn't even know I needed to cry. I literally cried for 10 minutes around a bunch of people I didn't know. I like had mascara running down my face after the yoga class, like, because it doesn't matter. But, and like, I could have chose to like not let myself cry. I could have like sucked it up because like we're so good at that.
Held
and
it
then
in.
like, oh, I need to be love and light because I'm like in a yoga class. Like, no, I just fucking let that shit rip.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
That's like
that's the best cries.
They
I feel like
teach
those are the
you
best cries.
in school when you become a therapist to not hand people a box of tissues
Yes.
because it stops them from crying. And it's funny, I was somewhere the other day in like a healing circle, and someone started crying, and someone grabbed the tissue box, and
Or
everything
the hand.
in me, yeah.
For me, it's the hand.
Yeah,
If someone touches me or tries to hug me, it's like, yep.
Yep. And
I'm
the
done.
woman just stopped crying right away. And I was like, no, she had more. So
she needed to make
It's
it
almost
bigger.
like it's not meant to be, but I feel like it almost takes it as like, okay, you can stop now. Like, here's a tissue, you know, but it's not meant to be that way. But I feel like we feel that. I feel that way sometimes. Like if
Well, a lot of people aren't comfortable watching people cry.
yeah.
So they need it to stop for their own, for them. It's like
Their
it's
own
like, I
shit.
need you to stop that.
yeah, because it's like people think because that person is crying, that's a bad thing, and that sadness is bad. Like, there are no bad emotions. There are difficult emotions, but there are no bad emotions, and we have to feel them all. And if you're not feeling them all, like, that's a conversation for your therapist.
Yeah, for sure.
Jill even says it like in the beginning, like when she's like, when people are crying, like don't
Touch them.
don't touch them, like don't try to get them to stop, like let them make it bigger. I always say it like in the sound baths and after the sound baths, that like if something comes up, like don't suppress it, like you have to make it bigger and you have to feel it, and that's the only way to feel it, is to almost make it bigger and not suppress it. Like it's like, okay, I'm feeling sad. Like, I want to feel as sad as I can in this moment. And I want to make this sadness so big so that way I can just get it all out. Get it out. I'm done.
Yep.
Shake it out.
Yep.
Get it out.
Get it out. Feel it to heal it, baby.
Feel it
All
to
right.
heal it.
Well,
Yes.
if there's one thing that our listeners could hear from you, like one important takeaway or message from this entire interview, what would you want it to be?
I would say everything I said in the last hour. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think it was like, your healing is not other people's business. And also like
that.
their healing is not your business. Like, we need to like focus on ourselves. Like, we're so focused on what other people are doing.
Yeah.
And
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Louder for the people
In the back.
yeah, and like, you know, just like they say, like, your opinion of me is none of my business.
Yeah,
like,
same. You're healing. Same.
yeah, you're healing.
I love that.
And I think also, like, listening to your gut when you're healing, and if something feels off, or you know, you are with a therapist and it's not a good fit, like knowing you can advocate for yourself.
Yes.
Because you're driving the car. Like,
We are our own advocates for sure.
yeah, I'm just here to like put the lines on the road for you to keep the car kind of in the lane, but you're driving the car, and you're the expert in your life. So
You're the expert in your life.
Maybe that's the episode title. You're the expert in your life.
Yeah, that's it. You are. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank
We're going
you.
to end the same way we started, with a nice connecting breath to ourselves, to our healing. One hand on the heart, one hand on the belly. Take a big inhale through the nose. Really fill up, lift up, feel the energy. Your energy. And then let that shit go. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye,
Thanks for
guys.
listening. Thanks, Phoebe.
Thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen to what we have to say. It means the world. As always, we want to end this episode by reminding you that we are not medical professionals and we are not giving any type of medical advice. We are simply sharing our experience and solutions.
We are here with the intentions of reminding you that you are never alone and that everyone's healing journey is unique to the individual. Make sure to follow us on all social media platforms to stay updated. Stay well, Sacred Rebels. See you next time.